Talking all things UCLA 25-26 on the basketball front and recruiting while going over memories with UCLA legend Kris Johnson joining us here today. More coming up on Locked On UCLA.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer, and today we have a special guest joining the show. We've got Kris Johnson, who's got so many things he does, whether it's Here District, the Bucks podcast, you've got those four letters, and of course, one not the most famous thing in them all, a national champion, a 4-year Bruin. Welcome to the show, Kris. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Zach. Excited to get it going about UCLA, baby. Let's do it.
All right, so we're going to dive into it. I know it's the heat of the summer. I know everybody's getting excited about fall camp, but I'm still super excited for the month of November when basketball gets here. And it's been a little bit of time between now and March since UCLA dropped in the Sweet 16. They got Donovan Dent coming into this upcoming year. And on the women's side, they got to their first Final Four in the NCAA era. Of course, they've won a national championship in the AIAW era. So first, we've got UCLA men's hoops. We'll start with that, Kris. UCLA has the big ad in Donovan Dent. They have a lot of ads in Jamar Brown, Stephen Jamerson, Peoples Jr., Xavier Booker, and then you have Markel Alston, who was one of those late high school ads. Besides Donovan Dent, who's going to get all the highlight tape and all the love, is there anybody that you expect to kind of stick out to jump on this UCLA roster and impact right away, at least from game one?
Of the new guys or guys?
Of the new guys.
Of the new guys, I'd say Stephen Jamerson the second. I think he's going to be a guy that's, a lot of people didn't know what type of role he would have been able to fill at UCLA coming from the University of San Diego. But on his tape, and I watched a lot of it at San Diego, very close with Coach Steve Lavin and assistant coach at San Diego, Earl Watson. This guy has translatable skills to the NBA. Live, active leaper, strong, two-handed rebounder in traffic, and will dunk you, finish, and will go after stuff on the glass. He's just the type of guy at 6'10", 245 that UCLA is going to need in the Big Ten. The Big Ten is a conference notorious for size. We saw that last year. Look, we did our best with Tyler Bilodeau at the 5 last year, in ED at the 4, and the small ball, and the limited minutes that Adai Mara would come in and play. We had several runs where we looked like a real team that could really compete. But at the end of the day, if you don't got size and girth and strength, you're not going to be able to handle it in the Big Ten. Jamerson, too, is my pick of the new guys outside of Donovan Dent to either be he's not going to, I won't say he's not going to start, but Booker will probably start just for everything that's associated with Booker starting. But Jamerson, too, is going to endear himself to Bruin fans right away.
That's interesting because I've always thought, everybody said X factor is literally Xavier Booker, but you're saying Jamerson will have a much not bigger impact, but he will surprise for UCLA fans in terms of what they need in the post, which is any production. If the UCLA had any production in the post from an expanded role last season, they could have gone much further in the tournament. They do that this year. We're expecting big things.
I think the defensive side of the ball is where UCLA needs the most help in the painted area. With Jamerson, too, you have a big, strong body, someone that fights for position, pushes guys out of position, and is quick enough to recover on the perimeter when you have those stretch fours like you're going to see at Illinois and Wisconsin and Purdue and some of these other schools, some of these bigs that you're going to have to get out there and close out on the perimeter. Jamerson, too, has both of those type of skill sets. The other guy that I think is going to play early and that Mick is going to put a lot of trust into is Jamar Brown, the transfer from the University of Missouri, Kansas City. Played for a coach out there I'm very familiar with, Marvin Menzies. Brown is going to surprise people. He's a lot better. I'll say this. I won't call him a better athlete than Stefanovic, Lazar, but he uses his athleticism in smarter ways than Lazar, particularly on the glass. He had games last year where he had 16 rebounds against Creighton, huge game against Iowa State to the tune of 20 points. Really unorthodox catch and shoot release kind of thing he's got going. But guess what? 40% from the 3 with a hand in his face. per synergy. Guarded threes, 40% last year. Look, 17 a game. Come on, I'm rolling. I'm feeling good about him in particular. And then when you listen to Mick Cronin, and I suggest everybody go and listen to his interview. He talked to some guys over at Bruin Online Report. But in that interview, you can sort of surmise from Mick's inflection in his voice, the tone, and how he's speaking, right? You could get a keen understanding of who's endearing themselves to Coach Cronin already in summer practice.
And another big thing is last year UCLA brought in Dominic Harris to be that three-point shooter. And do you think it'll be a little bit clear that Brown will actually crack the lineup compared to Harris?
Well, that's a great point. Yes, Dom, who had a great year at LMU the year before. Obviously, there's a drop in competition, so the adjustment to the Division I level with the type of shots and how he was getting his shots was an issue. But the reality is, Dom got in Coach Cronin's doghouse pretty early on. I mean, there were LA Times, Ben Bosch had tweeted a video from practice, and you could see early in the season last year, and I'm watching this stuff. I'm combing over it with a fine-tooth comb, rewinding, pausing. He was already in Dom's stuff like day one. So to see Dom not really get out the doghouse wasn't a surprise, because Dom would have, his body language on the sideline wasn't the greatest. I wish him the best at, where did he go? I think he ended up where? Loyola or somewhere now in Chicago?
I think maybe Loyola, Chicago, Ramblers. Yeah. There's so many transfers, you forget where they came from, where they are, and where they're at now, right?
Yeah, but he'll do fine. He'll do fine. But I do think that Brown is coming in a little bit more seasoned over having played in JUCO. It just does something for you from a level of hunger, of maturity, and for him of understanding that this is my shot. And he is skilled enough. I have a video that I put on YouTube, 40%. But I try to get people just an idea of how this guy's able to get his shots off, and then his prowess on the glass. Those are two things I think are going to earn him playing time fairly early for the Bruins.
All right, I'm going to give you kind of one final roster question on the men's side before we pivot to the women, because they're just as good. We're just as excited for them as well.
For sure.
Do you think on the court, right? I know there's the rumors and all the stuff about a Daimata off the court. We're going on the court. With what you've said about Jamerson, what you kind of think and know about Xavier Booker, has UCLA done enough in the offseason to replace what could have been the expected outburst from a Daimata on the court, or is Mick Cronin never really high on him on the court?
Yeah. So, I might not be the best guy to ask about this because I'm biased. I love a Dai, like undying love and dedication to a Daimara. He was like one of my favorite players ever.
I think everybody has that same kind of mindset about a Dai. Everybody's like, wow, look at the numbers when he plays.
And not only that, but he played with a flair, and he was special. I mean, I thought he was a unicorn 7'3" guy who had court vision, passing acumen, and accuracy that was severely untapped. You could have ran a Dai at the Jokic spot up top, handoffs, faking handoffs. This guy's passing was next level. He did things. I made some videos. He made a pass against Cal his freshman year where he was falling out of bounds and he swung it to, I think, Sebastian Mack with his left hand. It was like literally one of the most unbelievable passes I've seen. All that to be said, I had a lot of confidence in the guy. Now look, that don't matter, because if Mick Cronin doesn't have confidence in you, guess what? You're not going to get on the court. So whatever was going on with a Dai, his handlers, the minutes, his conditioning, his will to work, his desire to be here, to whatever was going on at the end of the day, Mick had to do what he had to do, and we had to retool and reload because we lost the kid. Once you lose the kid, that's it. As much as fans want to clamor and continue to bring it up, I don't blame us, because I still kind of bring it up too. If I see videos of a Dai right now, I retweet them and I'll be commenting on them like, hey,
yeah, to Michigan, you see those? He's looking real good at practice.
Yeah, he's looking real good in practice. He's doing what he needs to do. I can't wait to play Michigan. But to your question, is Xavier Booker enough to replace a Daimara? Let's see. Xavier Booker, 5-star pedigree, didn't have the greatest season his freshman year at Michigan State, still young, 7'6" wingspan, 245 pounds, 38% from the three in small samples, like, you know what I'm saying? But now if Savino does what Savino did with Bona, with Mara, helping their game, teaching them some serviceable, usable college basketball skill sets in the post. Man, Booker, are you kidding me? Because he's got the three, so you got to respect it. Now, if he can develop the pump fake, drive it, boom, or pull up, or pass, that part of his game, and then operating on the post, understanding spacing, angles. And then defensively, I think is the main concern about you for UCLA coach Mick Cronin is how to play without fouling, right? Because you had some pretty good defenders that played, it's not Bona, but you had some guys that were able to play good straight. Bilodeau's one of them, but hands straight up, rooting guys out, using your lower body type defense. I think that's what Mick and Savino, they love that, where you wall up on guys. So I think Booker, if he can learn that stuff in the post, and then he continue to elevate his offensive game on the perimeter, like people are saying, hey man, I hope he stays in the paint. Let's just be clear. That's not going to happen. He's going to be Xavier Booker, which is a stretch 4-y guy that's going to have to learn the nuances of the 5. And until he's fully comfortable, him and Steven Jamerson are going to split those minutes.
And the thing about Booker is that he would stay out kind of on the 3-point line, I believe, in Michigan State, right? He liked to shoot the 3 a little bit. If he stays out in spaces, that gives a lot of room, if I'm not mistaken, to Donovan Dent to drive. Or
100%.
say Bilodeau to give that room in the block without clogging the paint, and you can space out the floor differently while he plays like a hybrid 4-5 and still have the athleticism on defense. Would you agree, disagree?
I'm 100%, Zach. I mean, you make some really good points about spacing, and that's where Booker's value. I'm a gravity guy, so gravity. Every player has some sort of gravity, depending on how good you are, how well you shoot, etc. So now you add a Booker into the fold that now has a perimeter gravity. Now Bilodeau at the 5 had the same gravity last year, and you saw it equaled. We were able to get pretty. I thought we overachieved last year. I know people were kind of like, Kris, you're tripping. I'm like, nah, we weren't supposed to be this good. In my opinion, we shouldn't be top 4 in the Big Ten. We shouldn't be getting these wins on the road and being in these games and almost beating dudes. I was like, wow. But I think a lot of it had to do with teams' inability or the struggle to guard us because Bilodeau was doing the gravity thing on the 5s. And so now that sends you into scramble mode. For what you got to understand, when Booker is like, there's a video UCLA men's basketball just posted. Eric Freeney had the ball. He drove to the lane and kind of got stopped. You can see Steven Jamerson, number 24, 2 hands up. So that means, where's Booker? But in the beginning of the frame, I paused it and slowed it down. Booker, he got out of there as soon as that to your point about spacing, he got out of there as soon as Freeney drove. And because of that, you have to now pick your poison as a big man. Do I go out there with Booker at the 3, or do I stay wall up and try to stop this penetration? So now instead of Freeney having 2, he may have a 1-on-1 at the rim. You understand? So I'm not sure you get that, but that is like a serious value in the modern basketball. Okay, let's just be clear. We're trying to evolve UCLA's offense into the modern game, and Xavier Booker does just that.
And he can do that because I know there's been a lot of complaints sometimes for me, a lot from the fans too, about the lack of what looks to be a modern adaptation to Mick Cronin's offense for 100%. UCLA. They can play aggressive defense. They'll fight for rebounds. They'll be tough-minded. But offensively, he might say differently, or he likes to go one-on-one, go with his ISOs. You can look at Hawkins. You can look at all that as UCLA tenure. But you get somebody who can stretch out and hit a 3. You have to be able to hit that 3. But it's fun to see how UCLA is adapting. Next, we will talk about UCLA women's basketball because they are just as exciting, just as competitive. And we'll talk about Cori Close's bunch. We'll get into UCLA recruiting both the men and the women, and then we'll get to some highlights with Kris Johnson of his career at UCLA and other fun memories coming up next on Locked On UCLA. If you're trying to stay on top of your routine, whether it's workouts, long days on campus, staying focused through back-to-back classes, hydration is where it all starts. And that's where Drip Drop comes in. Drip Drop is a doctor-developed, scientifically proven for fast hydration. Uses the perfect balance of sodium electrolytes and glucose to help your body absorb fluids quickly, delivering 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of a leading sports drink. Well, if you're like, wait, I've tried a lot of electrolyte powders and nothing tastes good, it works as fast as Drip Drop. This is why it's for you. Right now, Drip Drop is offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first order. Head to dripdrop.com and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege. That's dripdrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONCollege for 20% off. Stock up now before the heat hits hard. Again, still joining us here in the Locked On UCLA podcast, we got Kris Johnson. Quickly, can you tell us a little bit more about those 4 letters and why you got it started before we dive into women's basketball?
Well, those 4 letters kind of came from me wanting to just do deep dives and talk about UCLA basketball. Like, I just wanted to be able to have a platform where I could write, interview people, post videos, post highlights, do whatever I wanted, because I'm a fan. At the end of the day, I am a national champion at UCLA, but I am a fan of both of these coaches and then these players. They really represent the 4 letters very well. And so they had a lot to do with it. Like, I really like both teams. And so I decided just to go all in. So I have a YouTube channel, I have a Substack, and then and I have a Twitter, and then I'm looking to expand it out a little bit with just more like media stuff, talking to players and talking to coaches more and stuff like that. I had Charli Walker on my podcast. I also have had Cori Close. Now I got to get some people on the men's side. Although I did talk to Mick Cronin years ago on a different platform, but I got to get that interview updated.
All right. Well, thanks for all the work that you do. And we're going to get right back in it to women's hoops. UCLA, they get to the Final Four. Cori Close gets over the hump. You could argue she was a little criticized for not getting there earlier in her tenure with all the big name recruits. Brought in a superstar class, brought in a lot of transfers. Last year, the Bruins, in the first time in the NCAA era, got to the Final Four with this bunch. Now, they were humiliated by UConn at the end of it, but a big thing was they got to the Final Four. They've upgraded in some spots, losing some talented players, but they had a successful year last year, got that win over USC when Juju was still healthy, Big Ten tournament champs. Do you think a Gianna Neepkins, do you think a Lena Bilic are one of those pieces with the Sienna Betts combined with obviously All-American talent Lauren Betts and company to take them over the top and take down UConn, take down South Carolina, or a maybe healthy USC team later in the year?
Well, yes. The answer is yes. I do think that Coach Close has assembled I won't say super team, but it's a pretty big time roster, top to bottom, where your freshmen are internationally seasoned ballers. Bilic, you mentioned 6'3", forward, guard, smooth, and she's probably not going to get a ton of time this year, but she can play, right? Sienna Betts obviously going to come in and do her thing. Look, when you're dealing with roster construction in the era of NIL and this new way of doing business, you have to be prepared for a few things. You have to be prepared every single season for people to leave. So the mass exodus that we saw at UCLA women's basketball this year, where all 5 or 6 freshmen left.
All the freshmen were gone. Barker was gone. Jones went to USC.
We lost Barker. Janiah Barker was one of my favorite women's basketball players that I've ever seen. And I'm not being hype. I just saw her game. Like, she had those spurts where you just be like, golly. Wow. There was a lot going on with Barker throughout her entire career. And once she gets it together at Tennessee, who we are playing this year. Okay, we got Tennessee, baby. It's going to be some things. But let's get back to the Bruins. So in the NIL era, right, you're losing everybody. You're losing all these big-time players. You got to be prepared to reload, okay? And I think Coach Close did a solid job you got to be prepared to retain your stars, your best players, and then reload to replace. And I think she did a really good job this offseason. Look, there aren't the flashy she got a player from Switzerland. There's a softball player that helped fill a roster spot. You have to kind of be.
Have you ever seen that? Just not to interrupt. Have you seen that? I know UCLA sent a basketball player to softball, but have you seen that's not too?
No, it's not too common. I've never seen. I haven't seen that go like that. But again,
and a superstar softball player that is a lot of trust between both programs.
But not only trust, but it speaks to the relationship. Also, that relationship is deep. Kelly has been and Coach Close have been there for a very long time, since I think even back in the 90s, I believe. I think Kelly was an assistant or something like that. But it's just a lot of history there. There's a lot of trust and there's a lot of respect for each other's programs. So when Gabriella went to softball, there's obviously that synergy there. So now that we have
Megan Grant.
Megan. Yeah, Megan. Now we have Megan. It's like, dude, and Coach Close, in her press release had said it. And I think that sometimes we forget. Like, she said she wants to help Megan live out her dream. Now, like, look, that's the essence of sports. That's the essence of what this stuff is about. Not often do you get a chance to do that. And I respect the coaches that give those type of opportunities. But back to the roster construction part of things. So you're going to have to be pretty creative, right? Because you got to look at everything in salary cap, professional terms, where you got to manage your money, who's getting paid what, and who's getting paid to fill what roster spot. That's just the reality. Now, this sounds like blasphemy to some of the traditionalists, right? Because we grew up in an era, who I am kind of one of them. We grew up in an era where we would never think about this. What about for the love of the game? What about for your education? First and foremost, love of the game, and you're getting a free education. That's all it should be about. It is no longer about that anymore. You have to be, as a head coach in college basketball, a GM, a director of basketball ops, the head coach, the doggone treasurer, because you got to keep tabs on money, the accountant, to make sure. So you have to wear a lot of hats. So my point about saying all of this, we're going to see rosters being built a little bit differently than we have in the past. And the additions that Coach Close has made reflect that. I obviously know a lot about the program, and the recruiting approach for Coach Close was that she called it a 4+4, where she was trying to sign 4 high school and get 4 from the portal. So figuring out 4 high school players. She has plenty of targets right now that are coming down the hopper. Autumn Fleary from Sidwell Friends, where Kiki Rice went to school. She's a point guard out of that DC area spark plug that is a game-changing talent. JC Abbey out of Texas, another kind of game-changing forward. But Close has been doing this. She is one of the greatest recruiters that we've seen in the last probably 10 to 12 years of women's college basketball. So this does not surprise me, her ability to bring in the high caliber level of person. You just now have to delegate things differently. So for instance, like a Janiyah Barker. So you got to outweigh the risk and reward. I'm sure that UCLA could have matched Tennessee. I'm sure if Janiyah had been the player off the court, been the leader, been everything that we needed her to be, there was no number that she wouldn't have been willing to match. Now, I don't have firsthand information of this. This is how I see it, but these are the conundrums, and this is how you have to think about things. London Jones, when she's talking about going to SC, hey, coach, I'm thinking about going to SC. Oh, how much they get offering you? Oh, whatever it is. I don't know, 600,000, whatever. SC has long pockets. We know this. Okay. Coach Close has to weigh whether or not London Jones is worth 600,000 out of her salary cap or her budget to retain. So that's the conundrum. I have utmost confidence. The person no one's talking about, and I hope more people will talk about. She had a knee injury suffered against UCLA while she was at Washington State. Charli Walker.
That is a forgotten superstar. She took Washington State to the tournament single-handedly and put them in the top 25 before.
I'm trying to figure out how we ended up with CLW. Like, I cannot believe this. Look, 4-time All Pac-10. 4-time All Pac-10. I asked her, because she corrected me on my podcast. I was like, yeah, you were 3-time. She was like, 4. She got the New Zealand accent. 4. I was like, oh, excuse me. Not only that, in that 2020 class, that freshman year with Caitlin Clark, Paige Beckers, and all them, she was averaging like 19, 20 a game. Come on, man. So her production as a additional ball handler, facilitator, a scorer, her leadership, her personality, her buy-in to the UCLA culture, the fact that she was there She's
been there the whole time
on the ride to the Final Four. She is going to be poised to have a major season, and it's going to open up things for Kiki Rice. Less pressure on Kiki, less responsibility on Kiki to have to bring it up, and where teams now can gear up towards pressuring Kiki, which took us out of the game a lot last year. We didn't have a ton of ball handlers to get the ball to Bet. So now if you take out Kiki, last year, if you took out Kiki, what was UCLA going to do? London could do it in spurts, but there was really nobody else. So now you have Leisure Walker and Jaquez, who is ever improving with her on the ball skills, spit this summer, along with several other young ladies competing internationally. And she, watching her game, she struggled because Mexico, it doesn't have a ton of talent. So she was one of the focal points of everybody defensively. But she picked up some usable and translatable skill sets that I think is going to help her in the long run be a more versatile player. We need Jaquez to be a versatile player, breaking down the press, making plays in space, making the right pass, couple of dribbles to get out of traffic here or there when your primary ball handlers get stuck, right? Then you have to think about Angela Dugalish, who was very experienced, 6-year senior, served 6'4", always impressed me with just her she's like a really strong player, but can shoot it, plays hard. Tamia Gardner, pure shooter, 6'4".
Was the reason UCLA beat LSU this year because she went off.
Come on. Hey, pure shooter. So now you're thinking about how are we going to create space for Lauren Betts to operate? You surround her with this crew. Okay, you're talking about if Charli CLW starting Kiki CLW, and then at the wing, I would say Jaquez. Who?
Gianna Neepkins from Utah.
Oh yeah, what am I talking about? Let's talk about Neepkins. It's so many, dude. Let's talk about Neepkins. Team USA absolutely had one of the most efficient shooting displays that USA basketball has seen in a long time. But movement shooting, I mean, they literally have a legitimate 1, 2, 3, a big 4, if you will, with Rice, Leisure Walker, Neepkins, and Betts, right? And then if you throw in that 5 with Gardner, whoever you're putting in at the 4 to go along with that crew, pick your poison. It's going to be matchup nightmares for teams. My concern for the Bruins would be on the defensive end, but you have enough players that are strong and that understand angles and IQ on the defensive end, that this thing could get ugly real quick for a lot of people, okay? And I'm not going to say we're going to go undefeated, but this is the type of team. Last year, 34-3? SC beat us twice, and UConn. So basically, we only lost to UConn, okay? SC, that stuff was crazy. Losing to them, it won't be the same this year with no Juju, although they do have Kennedy Smith, and some other really good players coming back, but I think that we could run the table. We saw what your Big Ten competition is going to give you. So now you got to kind of we saw that we smashed in the Big Ten. Okay.
Yeah, in some sports you see the move to the Big Ten is a good thing for the competition for UCLA athletics, and for women's basketball, they should be among the top every year in the Big Ten until 100%. Something changes. I mean, the Pac-12 was loaded, and the Big Ten, especially Caitlin Clark-less Big Ten, as much as they're passionate about the sport, it's not the same with UCLA and I have to say USC. They should be running the conference.
So we know what it is. You look at the non-conference now and some of the marquee matchups, and you can get through a couple of them because we got to go to Vegas. We're playing Texas. Then we play the winner of South Carolina and UConn.
I hope they play South Carolina. I hope they play.
I kind of want us to play UConn again just to get a temperature check. Gino, one of the great coaches of all time. Funny little story. The year we won the championship, 1995, was Gino's first championship. We both were invited to the White House. So we took a big team photo. I found a video. There's you see young Gino, Rebecca Lobo, some other legends, but it was just amazing to have been there with Gino in his first title at the White House. But when you beat Gino, it kind of, if you're able to get, and you said we've beaten him before. So last year in the tournament, I was really shocked at our performance because we UConn, we had beaten them before. I think Kiki had a triple-double against them the year before or something sick. So again, with this team, and I'm not going to be too long-winded with here, it's all about the mental, the confidence. We got the talent, we got the experience, we got the veteran leadership. Now it's just about putting it all together, getting on the same page, and putting together, game after game after game performances, stacked days.
And final question about the women's team. All right, you're looking 2026. I'm not looking in March or April. I'm looking in the fall, winter of 2026 when there's no Kiki, there's no Hawkes, there's no Lauren Betts. You've got Sienna, you've got Bilic. What does that team look like next year with no Neepkins, no CLW on the roster? Is there enough recruiting-wise? Because I know Sanaya Hall just chose USC. They've gotten a couple of back-to-back number one top recruits in these last couple of classes. is this UCLA's chance to get that championship, or will that change recruiting if they get that one this year? And then you start flipping those recruits that have been going to USC back to UCLA once this super class leaves.
Yeah, there's a lot on the table with this class, right? There's a lot on the table. There's a championship aspirations, and then there's when they leave, the cupboard will be bare. I mean, the pickings will be thin, but really, will they? We have a transcendent player in Sienna Betts. We can build around Sienna. Sienna is going to be a top 3 WNBA draft pick. Her sister Lauren's probably going to be the first pick in the draft. So let's just be real about when we talk about the women's game, how important Sienna Betts is. Lena Bilic is a high quality. Right now, nobody's talking about it. I watched her go for 40 internationally. Granted, it was against the B division, but the way she got it, it let me know that she has upside and potential that is untapped and that can be developed. Okay. We still have a lot of irons in the fire on the recruiting front. It's going to be imperative that Coach Close bring in reinforcements, high-level players that are ready to play right away. And not only on the recruiting front, but again, you have to, with a situation like this, you're going to have to build through some type of portal pickup.
This feels like a very portal-heavy offseason
you're gonna have to
next year.
Yeah, bro, you got to build through the portal pickups, right? The portal is going to be huge for us. So there may not be a drop-off. If let's say we hit next year's portal season, right, and there's all type of just savory characters, Coach Close can rebuild right away and put us right back in contention for a title.
All right, so my tradition is, Kris, I always end the show with an 8 clap. I never have had anybody on that does the 8 clap with me, mostly because I don't have any guests. But Let's get our hands up. Let's go. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA, fight. Let's go. It's obviously tough to do. You know, when you're like watching people do like TV segments and you're trying to see the delay and everything. So fun. Yeah, it's so fun.
The thing I always got confused about was the like you have to bring the clap high out of that. Like I used to be like so confused.
All right. Well, it's been a pleasure. You got Kris Johnson. You can see him on Hair District with his dad talking Milwaukee Bucks. Those 4 letters. He's got his Substack. He does his own pod. So give that love, and I'm sure we'll have him on again. The 1995 national champion and 4-year Bruins superstar in Kris Johnson. Thanks for coming on, Kris.
Thanks, Zach.
All right, this has been Locked On UCLA. Like, comment, subscribe, download. We'll talk more basketball, football, and everything on this pod. Go Bruins.